Hello, and welcome back to Women for Wealth. So, today I want to talk a little bit about emotions and how it ties to money and finances. So, first of all, I want to talk about women because part of the reason why I started this channel is because as a woman, I recognize that I have different emotions tied to money than my husband does, as well as my friends and my family. There's a lot of females that just have a lot of anxiety and stress around money, whereas their partners don't. And so I just want to chat about that a little bit because there's a wide range of emotions that people can experience around money. So with women, oftentimes money and concerns about financial stability brings about anxiety, especially when there is an unexpected financial obligation. The car tire blows out and you need to buy a new one. The middle kid needs braces all of a sudden, and you hadn't budgeted expected for that yet. And back when my kids had braces, the insurance didn't cover it, so all that had to come out of pocket. Well, if you hadn't planned for that, that can be a shock to the financial system, which does bring about a lot of anxiety. So, women tend to worry about finances, about themselves as well as their family. It's not just how they feel about money, but it's also how money affects their family. Is their money, enough to make sure their family is secure? And if anything comes up, that the kids are well taken care of, that there are no surprises, or if they are, that they've got emergency reserve funds to be able to cover that. There's a lot around women and money and wealth. But money and wealth can be empowering for women. If a woman has good financial independence, meaning they feel confident that they have saved enough for retirement, they feel confident that they've got 6 to 9 months worth of bills covered in their emergency savings, if they feel comfortable and confident that their family, themselves, as well as their children and their husband, is going to be financially taken care of, then that can actually be encouraging and empowering to women. So we want to move from the anxiety to the empowerment stage. Because let's face it, if you don't have enough money, or you don't know what you got, or you don't know that you're covered, or you don't have confidence in the financial plan, it's very frustrating. And it's really frustrating, especially if you and your spouse are not on the same page. If you've got a spouse that doesn't want to talk about money because it can cause arguments and problems within the relationship, so they just kind of shut down, well, that can be very frustrating. So you've got to find a way to communicate with your spouse, both men and women. Men, if you want to talk to your women and your wives about money and how it affects them, understand that women do tie emotions to money more than men do. There are men that can feel frustration and anxiety. Most of the time, men feel that as a projection from their spouse, as a projection from their wife. They feel those emotions. Women tend to experience and feel those emotions directly, personally. They personally get anxiety. They personally get frustrated. And fear, fear of poverty, fear of what happens if, those worst case scenarios. I'm just going to be honest with you. I've had 2 friends that have had really major financial issues in their lives. One of them, I got a phone call. For those of you that don't know, I do free coaching for women in STEM and women entrepreneurs. Some of that has entailed financial coaching. Usually it's career coaching. But one of the girls that I had been coaching, she had taken off for maternity leave. So she was giving birth and raising her son. So she was not bringing in an income. Well, her husband was also an engineer. He was making good money. They knew 9 months in advance when the baby was coming. So they had properly put plans in place to save money and have extra money set aside for when she would go out on maternity leave, so the family would be okay. But still, she's a new mom. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of emotions going through her. Her husband had a minor heart attack, and she calls me in a panic. First thing she said when I answered the phone was not, "Hello, how you doing?" "Hey, how's your day been?" It was, "He could have died." That's how she started off the conversation. And she was right. Her husband had a heart attack. That's very serious. That's something to not take lightly. First of all, is he okay now? Yes, he had gone to the hospital. He's taken care of. He's fine. He's going to be following up with a heart specialist. Great, wonderful. That's the most important thing, that he is okay. But immediately she went to the fear of, are we going to be in poverty? Are me and him and my new baby going to be, homeless? Because we can't afford a place to live because I'm not working while I'm on maternity leave. And if he were to pass, what would me and my child do? Life is good. Life is okay. God is in control. Don't worry. Now, for your fears about losing your home and not having a roof over your head for yourself and your son, let's talk about that. Let's put a plan in place. You had prepared for maternity leave. You have 6 months of emergency savings. So you've got that set aside. If you have to pull from it, you will replace it. Plus, let's remember, you are an engineer. And when you go back to work, or when you decide to go back to work, if you decide to go back to work, because she was considering becoming a stay-at-home mom, as an engineer, she has a higher than average salary. And with some planning and some proper budgeting, her and her son would be fine on a single engineer salary, because that's what they had planned to do with her husband. They had planned to live off of just his engineering salary. So if something were to happen to him, God forbid, her and her son would be okay just off of her engineering salary. Now, I understand she was considering being a stay-at-home mom, but if a life event is major as the heart attack resulted in death, which again, we pray never happens, but if that were to happen, she could work as an engineer and still raise her son. It might not be ideal, it might not be what she wants to do, but she could do it. A second example. So John was a good friend of mine. He was an engineer. He and his wife had 2 sons. She decided to be a stay-at-home mom because he was an engineer and had a good enough salary they could live off of his salary alone. So she didn't work. She never worked. For 2 decades, she had 0 out of the house job. So her skill sets had diminished during that time. He was on the way to work one day. He had a fatal car accident, completely unexpected, devastating to the family. The oldest son was getting ready to go away to college. The youngest son was in high school. She had no income. She had no skills. She didn't know what she was going to do. She just always expected John, her husband, to be there to provide financially for the family. Totally unexpected. They did not have an emergency savings account. They had like the baby emergency account of like $1,000, and that was it. He had health and life insurance through his employer. Upon his death, they lost their health benefits, and his life insurance paid out. Unfortunately, it was a fraction of what it needed to be, which is something we'll talk about later. Just being able to maintain semi-normal lifestyle, she blew through the life insurance, unfortunately, relatively quickly. She did not have a plan for how she was going to spend it. She was emotional. She did some emotional spending. She bought the oldest son a car to go away to college with. She didn't buy him a used beater that would get him from point A to point B, but she bought him a nice brand new truck to go to college with. The younger son that was in high school, she went and bought him, like on a spending spree, bought him all kinds of clothes for back to school. For herself, she had gone and purchased, the Gucci bag and, several of the high items, merchandise, clothing wise, the manis, the petties, the hair done, the microderm abrasion. I don't even know exactly what that is, and I apologize if I'm saying that incorrectly. I completely understood the emotional tailspin that her and her family was in at the sudden loss of her husband. I completely understand that. If the unlikely event happens in your life, which I hope and pray it doesn't, do nothing at least for a month. Let yourself process the emotions first. Then, when you can be rational and logical, sit down, write out a plan, write out a budget. What are you going to do with this money that you get from the life insurance policy? Especially if it's not enough, especially if it's not going to cover things. You need to write down and have a plan and make a conscious decision of how you're going to spend this money. And I understand that emotions and money are tied together, especially for women. I get it. I understand it, which is why it's more important for us to write things down, to really take a deep breath, get logical, get the emotion out of it, and write things down and make a plan. Let's talk about guilt. The second example I gave you, where she went out, she got the manis, the petties, the Gucci purse, the microderm abrasion, the new clothes. She felt guilty about that after the fact because she felt in the moment, she felt she had to make herself physically, appearance-wise, presentable to get back on the dating scene. That was what she said. She said, I've got to look good enough to find another husband because I can't do it alone. And I remember telling her, you can do it alone if you choose to, but you need to make the conscious decision that you're going to do it. You need to come up with a plan and then execute that plan, but you can do it. She was like, no, 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 no. I've got to find another husband. I've got to look good enough for another man to want me. Well, then, fast forward, gosh, it was probably a year later. The money was gone. The oldest son is in college. The younger son's still in high school. They were doing well. They had adjusted. They were doing good. Both of them had good grades in school. Both of them had a positive social life, but the money was gone. She had blown through the life insurance. The money was gone. And so what do? Do you call up your oldest son and say, I'm sorry because I, spent all this money wastefully back then because I was emotional and upset and I was trying to fill the gap with material items. I don't have enough money to let you go back to school for another semester. You're going to have to come home. You're going to have to quit college. You're going to have to get a job. Well, that is a very difficult conversation to have. And she felt a ton of guilt. A ton of guilt. And so you need to have a written budget. You need to know what you can spend, what, where, and how. Every month, if you want to do these extra things for yourself or for your kids, or you want to splurge or you want to spoil somebody, be it yourself or a family member, have the budget to know how much you got to do that with. In your budget, include a line item. I write down Circes. Circes are just little things, little surprises, just something to make somebody smile and happy for the day. It doesn't have to be expensive, doesn't have to be big. It can be something small, but just something to let people that I love know, hey, I love you, I appreciate you, thank you for being here. If you've got a bigger budget, maybe instead of putting Circes, you want to put, I don't know, call it whatever you want to call it. But have money set aside to do that so that when you spend it, you don't feel guilty. If you've got the money in the budget to get manis and petties and your hair dyed every month, then put that in your budget. Make a line item for that. Put it in your budget and say, okay, I have in my budget this amount every month that I can spend on those items. And include them and give it a name, give it a dollar amount, and then stick within that budget. Then you don't feel guilty. Then you can go and enjoy the pampering and enjoy yourself and feel good about spending that money because you know that you budgeted, everything else is taken care of. You know that you've got your short-term emergency money as well as your 6 to 9 month emergency budget. You know that you're taken care of. You've got that security and you can enjoy yourself instead of feeling guilty. So let's talk about confidence. Let's talk about how good you feel and how confident you feel as a female when you're taking care of your business. When you have your financial plan, when you have your budget, you are working it, you are so confident. I want you to sit up, put your shoulders back, put your head up, and really have confidence and feel good about yourself and be like, you know what? I am in control of my money. It isn't in control of me. And that really helps to gain that confidence as you do this, as you pay off debt. It's going to build your confidence so you can continue to pay off more and more and more debt. Then you're going to have the confidence to say no and not go back into consumer debt in the future. So let's talk about hope. Hope is something that I forget the saying, but there's some saying that isn't very nice about what you do with hope. And it's you need to do more than hope and wish. You need to make something concrete. You need to follow through. You need to take action instead of just hoping and wishing. And I agree with that. But if you're taking the steps and you're taking the action, you should feel hopeful about your future. You should feel hopeful about the fact that someday you are going to be able to tell your boss, hey, shove it. I'm gone. I'm retired. I'm out of here. And that is something that, you only get that hope for the future if you do the planning and the hard stuff today. And it's tough. And I agree it is. But you have to be hopeful and optimistic about the future so that you can make the short-term sacrifices and do the hard stuff short-term. Pride. So I'm not talking about being prideful. I'm talking about having pride in yourself over what you've accomplished and over the advances you've made in controlling your money. You are in control of your money. You tell your money where to go and how it's going to grow your wealth and how it's going to increase your future bucket. Your future retirement lifestyle is going to increase because you tell your money today where it needs to go. You're making a small sacrifices short term today for the long term gain of someday being able to have pride because you're retired and you're not living paycheck to paycheck. You don't care if Social Security dries up and goes away. You're able to still do what you want to do when you want to do it because you planned, you had control of your money, and you did what you needed to do. And you're proud of yourself for accomplishing that. And you're proud of the lifestyle you're going to have in retirement. I've got a friend of mine, she and her boyfriend, they live down in, I think it's a Margaritaville retirement community down in Florida. It's not the Villages. It is a retirement community that Jimmy Buffett started. They bought a house there. It's an active retirement community. She absolutely loves it. She goes to yoga every morning, every afternoon. There's a crafting session. So she's making stuff, building stuff. What do they call it? Driveway drinks. She has a group they call the driveway drinks. So every night after dinner, a bunch of friends come over to her driveway, set up lawn chairs, and they drink, they listen to music. One of the guys in the neighborhood was a former DJ. He brings his stuff, he sets up music. They drink, they laugh, they dance in her driveway every night after dinner. Now that is her dream retirement that she made possible because she and her boyfriend had planned and saved and planned and saved and sacrificed early on so that when they retired, they wouldn't be limited in what they do. She also, her extended family is in Italy. She takes a trip to Italy every single year to see extended family. She doesn't have to worry about the money. Sometimes she flies first class. Sometimes she doesn't if she takes Ewald with her. It just depends on what she wants to do in that moment. And I think it's great that she has manifested the lifestyle in retirement that she always wanted, she always dreamed of. She truly is living her dream. So remember, if you want to limit your stress around money, you have to plan. You have to budget. You have to tell your money where to go. You have to try to detach the emotion and become more logical and put an action plan in place, written down, and then move forward from that moment. And then you can really accomplish your dreams and your goals. And you can live a hopeful, empowered life where you can be truly proud of yourself. Now, I know this might be getting a little bit long, but I think this is important, so I want to tie this in too. So let's talk a little bit about the differences between men and women. I've talked a little bit about it, but I want to kind of dig into this a little bit more because men and women feel very different about money. And a lot of it is tied to, how does social constructs and stereotypes and gender norms, how does that play into money? Well, it does. One of the things is risk tolerance. So men tend to be more risk tolerant. Women tend to avoid taking risk. Women tend to be more safe, more trepidatious, a little bit more conservative with their money, whereas men will be more into risk taking. So you think about the differences of how women and boys are raised. I remember being told I couldn't climb trees or I shouldn't climb trees, where my brother was told, "Oh, that's great. Can you get to the next limb on that tree? Can you climb higher?" And so that is one example of differences in risk tolerance. So, from a very young age, genders are taught to deal with risk in two separate ways. And then women, of course, as they become mothers, they add in the additional risk avoidance of I've got kids that I have to take care of. I need stability. I need the I need the safety nets. Women feel like they need the safety nets, and so the very conservative, long-term, less risk investing is the way women tend to go. Men tend to be a little bit more riskier. Men will invest in the startup, knowing that, hey, it's kind of all or nothing with the startup. Most of them fail, but if they're successful, Amazon is a great example of that. If you had bought Amazon early, which men did, women by and large did not invest in Amazon early on. The men did, they have seen tremendous return on that investment. So men just statistically will invest in startups. They will have riskier investments. Women, on the other hand, do not. They're very risk averse. They're very conservative and look at more long-term, stable, secure, surefire bets. Women invest in the S&P 500, companies that have long success track records that they know, hey, I might not get as high of a return, but I'll be guaranteed not to lose my money. That's where women tend to put their investments. And it's not a good or a bad, one way is not better than the other, but you need to understand this so that if you are married, you can have the conversation around, okay, how are we going to invest for our future? What are we going to invest in, for our retirement? How are we going to go about this? Just understand that your husband might be looking at the next big startup, where you're probably looking at an EFT or an REIT. And we will, in the future, we will have somebody come on and talk about investing and investment recommendations. So I'm not going to get into that today. Financial goals. Men and women have different financial goals. Women are focused on stability and retirement, whereas men are more focused on short-term gains with higher potential returns. So financial goals, men are wanting to get there fast, large sums of money fast, whereas women are very slow and methodical, and I'll get there eventually. And I want to make sure my money doesn't run out. I want to make sure I don't outlive my money in retirement. So talking about money, again, men and women communicate very differently. Research suggests that women are more likely to discuss financial matters with their spouse before making a decision. So women tend to go to their husbands and say, hey, think about investing in this. What do you think about that? Whereas men tend to they're assertive, they're dominant. They're like, that startup really looks good. I think there's a lot of upside in that. I think this could really be the next Amazon. This could be something. I'm going to throw $1,000 into it, and they're just going to do it. They don't necessarily discuss. And the opposite happens with spending habits. A lot of times a man, if he wants to buy something, he's looking for something for himself, usually something more high end, higher value. He's looking, hey, can I buy a new boat? something like that. So they'll go to their spouse and say, hey, I know we've got this plan. I know we've got this budget. I know this money set aside for this. However, I'd like to buy a new bass boat, and here's why. But if women are making purchases and spending, they don't tend to ask their husbands, because women tend to spend money on family items. So they tend to feel justified in that spending. Well, I'm spending this for the family. I'm buying a camper because then the family can afford to go on vacation and the kids can have experiences where they're out in Mother Nature. They get to go hiking, they get to go swimming in the pond. When the women look at, okay, this is experiences for the kids and the family, and this will benefit the whole family. So they might not mention it to their husband. They might just do it because it's in their mind, they've justified that this was best for the family. There are two things you need to be able to do. Number one, you need to be able to get out of debt. You've got to control your spending. You've got to have a written budget. You've got to have a plan. But you also have to increase your income. So how do you increase your income? Well, at some point in your career, you're going to have to ask for a raise. Most companies, most bosses will give you like the annual, the offset for the cost of living, offset for inflation, whatever that is, 2%, 2.5%, 3%, 3.5%. You might get that annually. But if you really want a big raise, if you want a 7% raise, for example, or a 10% raise, you're going to have to ask for that. You're going to have to justify how you're valuable, more valuable to the company. Show them and explain to them how what you've done recently and the things that you have accomplished justify the higher pay increase and justify a higher salary or promotion. Men tend to just ask for it. Women tend to not ask for it. I know in my family, my brother got my great-grandmother's, my grandmother's stuff, got several different things from different family members. My mom said he got his inheritance early. He didn't wait for people to die. He got his inheritance early. Well, I didn't get anything. And my brother and I were kind of discussing it. We weren't arguing at all, but I was just like, hey, you've gotten everything. I've gotten nothing. And it's not right. And you should understand it's not right. He has 3 girls. He had a son, unfortunately, that passed away. And I'm like, you should understand and you should have seen the gender disparity in our family and how you and I were treated so different. And you shouldn't want your girls to go through the same thing. You should want your girls to be treated fairly and equitably. And he was like, well, you can't blame me because I got everything. I asked for it. You didn't. If you wanted something, you should ask for it. And I'm like, it wasn't comprehensible. It wasn't even something I thought to have asked for. My great-grandmother had a house that she was renting out. It was on a double lot. My brother just asked for it, said, I want that house. I want that double lot. And it was just given to him. And he was supposed to pay rent because she did have a renter in there that she had to kick out for her to give him the house. He agreed to pay rent. He never paid rent. He basically just said, I'm sorry, I don't have the money to pay rent. I'm not going to pay rent. And didn't. And nobody said anything to him about it. And again, for me, that's just incomprehensible. My grandfather was a realtor. He had a bunch of land. My brother just asked my grandmother, hey, can I have this 9 acres here? Hey, can I have this 12 acres here? Hey, can I have the land with the creek on it? She just gave it to him for free. Just gave it to him, signed it away to him. And again, to me, I could have never comprehended even asking for it. I just assumed incorrectly that my family would have been fair and equitable between me and my brother. And they absolutely have not been ever, even to this day. But that's probably something I need to talk to my therapist about, not to you. Point being, men tend to ask for salary negotiations and ask for more money. Women don't. Women, we need to start asking. We need to start justifying a higher pay scale. We need to stand up for ourselves and be vocal. And I can help you with that. I'll probably have a second segment on that. I do have a blog, leanedon.com. And the whole thing with leanedon.com, I've been blogging there since 2014. My blog is really around how can we lean on the ladder and climb, because men have been climbing the ladder forever. Women, I think we didn't know, at least I didn't when I first started, I didn't know how to climb the ladder. I had to figure it out. And so I want to educate other people and other women on, okay, how do you climb the ladder? How do you ask for a raise? How do you do it in such a way that they can't tell you no? It's a shoe-in. All you do your work, you put it together, you present it, and then they say yes. And then you kind of walk out of the room and you're like, why didn't I do this 6 months ago? And I want that for you. I want you to have the confidence and the ability to go in and ask your boss for a high raise, but have the documentation and the evidence to back it up, to prove it, to justify it, so that you don't have any hesitation. You can say, I'm worth more, I'm worth this, and here's why, and prove it to them. And make it where they can't say no. I'm telling you, I've done it. It works. You can check out my blog on leanedon.com, because women need to start asking for more. We have to ask. That's important. You have a voice, use it. Ask. So women are also more likely to look out and seek financial education. I think we know that because we haven't participated in businesses, wealth building, various things like that, hey, I've never done it. I don't know anybody that's ever done it. Let me go educate myself. Let me learn how to do it, because I'm going to do it. So women are more likely to seek education than men. Men tend to not look for education and financial literacy. They tend to ask their dad, ask their grandpa, ask their buddies. It's just a different approach. I know when I did Dave Ramsey twice, both times I registered for Financial Peace and brought my husband along with me. And you might say, why did you do it twice? Did it not take the first time? No, it actually did take the first time. So the first time we took it was when we were younger in our marriage. It prevented me and my husband from doing the stupid stuff. We didn't get into the credit card debt. We didn't do a lot of the stupid purchases. We didn't buy the new cars. So we actually, having gone through Financial Peace, we went in not from a spot of desperation. We went in from a spot of, we want to learn. And we learned what the roadblocks were, and we learned how to avoid them. And so we never got into the bad financial place. Now, we did end up, having trouble with finances just because we didn't bring in as much as we were spending at one point, but that was not due to credit card debt or things like that. That was a whole nother thing that we can talk about later. The second time I went through Financial Peace, so I had a job where someone thought I was starting my own company, and my own company was going to be in competition with the company that I was working at. It was absolutely not true. I don't know who started the rumor. I don't know where it came from. It was not true. But I started getting a lot of phone calls. Hey, I heard you're starting your own company. I think that's great. I think you should do that. I think you'll be great. Yeah, once you get it going, let me know and I'll support you. I'll give you some work. And I got so many of those positive phone calls that it kind of planted a seed that, hey, so many people think I can do it. Maybe I should. Maybe I can. Maybe I should. And so I went through Financial Peace the second time so that I could make sure that I understood all the techniques so that I could put myself in a position to where in the future, if I decided to open a company, I could. And that's exactly what I did. Again, we didn't have credit card debt, but I paid everything else off that I could except the house. I started saving and, squirreling away cash as much as I could. I had the 6-month emergency fund that would cover all our bills for 6 months. But I knew if I was going to start my own business, I might not make an income for 3 years, which I really didn't. And so instead of just stopping at 6 months, I just kept piling cash back. When I finally got to the point that I was ready to start my business, I went to the Women's Business Center, which I highly recommend women, if you're thinking about starting a small business, go to your local small business. Women's Business Center is free. These people are phenomenal. First thing they're going to tell you is put a business plan together. You're going to put it together. You're going to sit down with them. You're going to review it. They're going to help you with your business plan. Once that's done, then they're going to help you with whatever else you need. I went down the path of financing. Do I think my company is going to be successful? Yes. Going back to women are risk averse, I wasn't willing to put every asset, and when I say every asset that was in my name was going to go, as every asset was going to be part of the lien of the loan. So if I wasn't successful with my business and had to shut it down and go bankrupt to go out of business for any reason, every asset I owned was going to be seized as part of this loan. And I wasn't willing to do that at all. I wasn't willing to sign away all of that, especially since I had a stockpile of cash. And I'm like, you know what? I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of your help, all the education I received along the way. I'm going to bootstrap. I'm going to self-fund my company. And that's exactly what I did. And I did it because I was able to, because I had taken financial peace twice. I started out from a position where I wasn't in credit card debt. I had already been taking the steps. I didn't have commercial debt. I had squirreled away immense sums of cash. Looking back, one of the mistakes I made is, as I was saving all this cash, I was just putting it in a regular savings account at the bank. Today, if I were to do it again, I would put it in a high yield, high interest savings account, let that money work for me while it's sitting there, let it grow a little bit. But, again, that goes back to, as we learn, as we know better, we do better. And that's the thing. As you know better, you do better. So I appreciate you being here, because I think that you're reaching out so you can have that financial education. You can have some financial literacy. You can learn about money, learn about how women can take control of their money and their budget, and they can have financial independence. Let's talk about emotional responses to financial setbacks. So when there's a financial setback, whatever it is, the market crash, one of the many bubbles, there was the dot-com bubble, there was the housing bubble, and all this has happened within my lifetime. When something happens financially and there's a financial setback, emotionally as a woman, I internalized it, and I felt I had made a poor decision, that I had not educated myself well enough, that I had not done the things that I needed to do to put myself in a better position, that if I had only educated myself, if I'd only known better, then I would have made better decisions and I could have avoided it. Well, that's stupid. You can't avoid it. I mean, housing bubble happened. It affected hundreds of thousands of people, not just me, a lot of people, and so as a female, when we do have a financial setback and something happens, just realize that, hey, this isn't just affecting you. This isn't just your problem. Unfortunately, our economy in the U.S. has not been consistently strong. We've had several of these dips. I think we're going to have another. I can't tell you when, I can't tell you why and how much, but I do believe that we're in a position where I just don't feel comfortable with the Fed. And I don't remember the exact quote, but Ben Bernanke used to be the Fed chair. And Ben Bernanke is a South Carolina boy. And he had said one time, when it came to inflation and interest rates, that the Fed was basically driving a car without a steering wheel, with a blindfold on, and not knowing what's the difference between the brake pedal and the gas pedal. Basically, the Fed has no clue what they're doing when it comes to interest rates and inflation. And I believe that. I do. I believe that. I think we have some brilliant, smart economists in the U.S. I think they do the best they can, but they don't know everything, and markets are so volatile that I don't think they can confidently predict the outcome of some of the decisions they make. And I don't think we're out of the woods with another economic downturn in the U.S. I hope and pray we are. I pray for the Fed people all the time. The new chairman, I pray for him to make good, solid decisions. But at the end of the day, people are people. We do the best we can with the knowledge we have. And then we try to deal with the outcome from that, but we can't control the future. And finally, let's talk about perception of wealth and success. So, what does it look like from a female perspective to be successful? What is wealth? What is success? Ask yourself, what do you think success is? What do you think wealth is when it comes to money? Is it stability? Is it having 3 to 6 months of emergency savings? Is it having 9 to 12 months? Is it having a fully funded retirement to where you know you're not going to outlive your money? Is it knowing that your children are going to be taken care of, that your children's college is covered? Is it beyond that? Is it wanting to leave a legacy? That's more of a male perspective. I hadn't had a female yet tell me they want to leave a legacy, but I think that's something we should consider. Men look at leaving a legacy. They want to attain and build enough wealth in their empire that they can financially make a positive impact for not just themselves and their kids, but their kids' kids. And I've heard it, as I was preparing before I started this YouTube channel, Women for Wealth, I was watching other YouTubers talk about finances and wealth and prosperity, and they were all men except for one. There was one female. I think she, in my opinion, was a little light. She talked more about her personal experiences, which I think is good because you do relate when people talk about themselves and give examples. It makes it relatable. But the men really dig into it. The men specifically, there's one guy and he talks about leaving a legacy for not yourself, not your kids, but your kids' kids. That's how far he wants his money to stretch and positively impact the financial health of his family, his grandchildren. And I think that's something that women can do too. I think we, with some education and some support and some knowledge, I think we can, have a plan, budget, tell our money where to go, invest wisely, start small businesses, start empires. I tell people that once you start one business, it's almost like an addiction. I started Select Power Systems 7 years ago. I started Select Renewable Systems 2.5 years ago. I started Sustainable Fuel Tech in December, just a couple months ago. So once you start a business, it kind of almost becomes like an addiction. It's hard, but it's so rewarding, and it's something that you feel proud of, and it's something at the end of the day you're like, yeah, I built that. I did that. Entrepreneurship is not for everybody. I'll say that again. Entrepreneurship is not for everyone. If it is for you, if you have that itch, I think it's a great way to go. Put it in the comments below. We'll talk about it. I'll talk about how I've done it 3 times. I'll talk about, again, some of the roadblocks. How can I help educate, inspire, and empower you to become wealthy? And if your path is entrepreneurship and it is to build an empire, then I want to help you do that. If your path is more, I want to get into rentals, I'll be honest, I'm not an expert there, but I can bring experts on that can talk to you, that can walk you through the process, that can give you some recommendations on what to do. Also talk about what not to do, some of the, valleys and some of the gotchas within that process. I can talk about the gotchas. I can talk about some of the problems. I can talk about the stress, the headache, the anxiety. There's a reason why I sold all of my rentals and I don't do rentals, but I do understand that it is a vehicle for some people to become wealthy. So you just have to figure out how you want to get there, what your path is, what your plan is. Then once you figure it out, it's just writing it down and executing. It's not hard from that point. But just know that me and the Women for Wealth community is here to help you and support you. So you're not alone in your journey. We're here. There's some of us that's been there, done that. There's others of us that are looking forward to trying it. There's some of us who are experts that can give you advice and really help you out in your path. We are a wide, wide, wide community. There are a lot of women now that do want wealth. There are a lot of women that want to take care of themselves and have financial independence for themselves and their kids. If you have a husband, that's great. I have a husband. We've been married 26 years. I do know that there is a statistic that says married people have more in retirement than singles and individuals. Not to say they're more successful, not to say they have enough, but there is that stat that say married women who have a husband to help them where they have two incomes, that they're better off in retirement than a woman that never got married. I don't know. My path was marriage because that's what I chose. I believe that both paths can be successful and bring you to whatever end you choose. That's the hardest part, is deciding where you want to be. The hardest part is deciding how much you want in your retirement, what lifestyle you want to have, what lifestyle you want your family to have. Do you want to leave a legacy to your grandkids? Make those decisions for yourself. Once you make the decisions, putting a plan in place and executing is not difficult. Deciding what you want is your biggest challenge. So I challenge you. I tell people, go to your Wonder Dome. The Wonder Dome is Wonder Woman's equivalent of Batman's Batcave. Go to your Wonder Dome, isolate yourself, think about it. And then once you know what you want, then let's work together. Let's put a plan in place, something that you can execute so that you can achieve your dreams.